to breathe normally again. Ahead of him lie the welcoming farms of white Presbyterian and Quaker farmers, of free blacks who do not fear the writs and guns of slave hunters, and his own freedom. George the Baptist, the man who prompted the barber's elaborate escape, who executed it, who ensured that even if the fugitives' party was discovered, it was carrying enough firepower to defend itself, was also, as it happened, a barber. He was also the secret head of the local Underground Railroad. In some respects, the Baptist was a very ordinary man, about 30 years old at the time, well known to everyone in Madison as a respectable member of the town's small free black middle class. Unknown to them, almost every day of his life, he tested the limits to which a black man would be allowed to go in the deeply racist America of the 1840s. It was dangerous enough for radical white abolitionists to risk helping fugitive strangers, breaking federal law every time they did it. For a black man, who could never count on the law to be on his side, it was brave beyond imagining. For the Underground, both opportunity and death were as close as the Kentucky shore. Madison stood on the invisible line that ran along the Ohio River, dividing the slave states from the free as absolutely as if they had been cut apart by a cleaver. During his 8 years in Madison, the Baptist estimated that he personally assisted 108 fugitives to freedom, and several times that number indirectly. Failure at any point could easily have cost him his life. The name of the barber who escaped that night more than a century and a half ago has long been forgotten. His story still exists only because it survived in the memory of George the Baptist, who recounted it to a reporter for a Detroit newspaper in 1870, a few years before he died. But the events of that night were epical in their way. Another chip had silently been knocked out of the edifice of slavery, and another victory gained for the clandestine army that was changing America. At the start of the 21st century, Americans are in the midst of a contentious, often painful, national debate about slavery and its role in American history. At a time when earlier remedies for inequality have been discarded as politically and practically unacceptable, as the historian of American slavery, Ira Berlin, has put it, slavery has become a language, a way to talk about race, in a society in which it seems that blacks and whites hardly talk to each other at all. Modern-day racism's roots lie in the slavery era, and any attempt to seriously address race today must also take into account not only the slavery of the past, but also the commitment and sacrifices of other Americans, both black and white, to bring slavery to an end. A better understanding of the Underground Railroad and of men and women like George the Baptist deserves to be part of that conversation. The Underground Railroad occupies a romantic place in the American imagination that is shared by only a few episodes in the nation's history. The Lewis and Clark expedition, for instance, the California Gold Rush, the Indian Wars, and a handful of others. It is a term that is so instantly recognizable that it is today automatically applied to clandestine routes of travel, whether of downed Allied airmen from Nazi-held France or refugee Afghans making their way to Western Europe from their war-torn homeland. During the Civil War, Southerners even used it to describe the passage of escaped Confederate prisoners southward from Yankee jails, with the help of pro-slavery sympathizers. Yet its true history and its lasting significance are surprisingly little known. Because the Underground Railroad was secretive, and because much of its story has been forgotten or deliberately suppressed, its memory has sheared away into myth and legend like no other piece of our history. To most Americans, perhaps, mention of the Underground Railroad evokes a thrilling but vague impression of tunnels, disguises, mysterious codes, midnight rides, and hair's-breadth escapes. And although residents of almost any town in the northern states have heard about some old house or hidey-hole in which fugitive slaves were supposedly sheltered, few can name a single man or woman who was part of the Underground Railroad, apart from the inimitable Harriet Tubman. The story of the Underground Railroad is an epic of high drama, moral courage, religious inspiration, and unexpected personal transformations played out by a cast of extraordinary personalities, who often seem at the same time both startlingly modern and